Some stories are about the battles we fight, others about the ones we survive. What if you had the chance to rewrite your past, to take control of your future and make those who wronged you pay? This is one of those stories. If you've ever felt like the world was stacked against you, or been pushed to the edge, you'll want to stick around. Because this journey is about more than just revenge, it's about redemption. Like what you hear, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and let me know what would you do if you could rewrite your story. The slap echoed in the small apartment, a stinging reminder of the pain I'd been avoiding for years. My stepmother's sharp, mocking laugh followed, but I couldn't focus on that. My mind was on Jason, his piercing gaze, his cold words that crushed whatever remained of my trust. "Today, you'll give Susan your job," he said, as if I were nothing more than an object to be moved. "Once the paperwork's done, we'll get the marriage certificate. You stay home. I'll take care of everything. You're not made for that factory, Mia. You're better off being a housewife." The anger rose inside me like a volcano. My father had died for this, his sacrifice, the job he left me, his legacy, and now they wanted to take it away. I stared at Jason, my breath catching in my throat. My heart raced. This wasn't the future I'd agreed to. I could feel my stepmother's fake concern weighing down on me like a shroud. "Mia, you're so lucky. Jason's permanent at the factory. He's doing you a favor. Our family doesn't need any dowry, just a good girl to help him. You'll have it all. Just give up your job." I wanted to scream, to throw their lies back in their faces. But instead, I stood there, my fists clenched at my sides. The world seemed to blur around me. My father had been a martyr. That job, that factory position, it was mine by right. I wasn't going to let them take it. Not now, not ever again. "You've made your decision, but I'm making mine now," I said, the words cold and final. Jason blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I'm not getting married," I said, louder this time. The words tasted bitter, but they felt like freedom. "I'm not handing over my job. I won't give it to Susan. And I sure as hell won't let you use me to fix your family's problems. I'm not some pawn to move around." Jason's face twisted, anger flaring in his eyes. "You're being unreasonable. This was the plan. We agreed. You wanted this, Mia." "No," I cut him off. "I didn't want this. Not then. Not now." The silence in the room felt heavy, suffocating. My stepmother's jaw dropped. "You're refusing?" she hissed, her voice laced with venom. "You ungrateful little brat." I stepped away, the disgust in my chest rising. "You don't get to call me ungrateful. You don't get to dictate my future. The job my father left me, it's mine and it stays mine." Jason surged forward, fury written all over his face. "Mia," he shouted, grabbing my arm, his fingers like iron. "You're making a huge mistake." I yanked my arm free, my eyes filled with a cold, burning determination. "No, Jason, you're the one making a mistake. You think I'll bend for you like I did in the past? You think I'll let you use me again? Think again." My stepmother's eyes were wide with disbelief. "You little," she raised her hand to slap me, but I stepped back, my gaze sharp. "Don't touch me." Jason's anger exploded. "You'll regret this," he spat. "This marriage, this job, it's all for your good. You'll regret rejecting it." "I don't regret a damn thing," I replied. "But I know exactly how you'll regret this." The tension was thick, and for a moment, the world around me seemed to still. But then the reality hit me, their betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest. I was free, no longer the weak, naive girl who followed along. I marched to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold. The neighbors were already gathered outside, their murmurs soft as they looked at me. I didn't care. I had to speak the truth. "Jason and Susan want to steal my job," I announced, my voice clear and strong. "They think I'll just hand over what my father left me. But they're wrong." Mrs. Wang, always the first to speak up, looked horrified. "What? Steal your job?" "Yeah," I said, my voice rising. "My father was a martyr, and they want to take everything he gave me. Jason doesn't care about me. He cares about Susan." I turned to my stepmother. "And she's using me to get what she wants, to marry him. She wants my job." "Well, not anymore." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Jason's face turned ashen. He stepped toward me, his voice low, but full of malice. "You're going to regret this, Mia. I've regretted trusting you my entire life," I shot back. "And now, I'm done." Suddenly, my brother William burst through the crowd, his face twisted in rage. "Mia, "What's all this nonsense?" he shouted. He raised his hand, about to strike me, but before he could, the neighbors surrounded us, holding him back. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Mr. Lee barked. "You don't hit your sister. Not in front of all of us." William struggled, but he was pinned down. His anger was palpable, but the neighbors weren't having it. "Mia's been through enough. Don't you dare touch her again. Stop stirring up trouble," William yelled, his face red. "You're just jealous. You don't want Susan to have anything." I stood tall, watching the scene unfold. My heart was pounding, but it was no longer fear. It was strength, and it felt damn good. I glanced at Jason, whose face was twisted in disgust. "You all want my father's legacy?" I asked. "You'll have to pay for it." The door slammed behind me, and the sound of their chaos seemed distant now. My mind was racing. Everything had changed. No more lies. No more pretending. No more being used. I was done. I couldn't believe the silence that followed. Jason stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. The man who had once claimed to love me, who I'd thought would be my partner, was now nothing more than a stranger. His eyes flickered between me and the growing crowd of neighbors, his rage smoldering but unable to escape. My stepmother was still in shock, her mouth moving but no words coming out. Then, her eyes narrowed, and I saw it, the same calculating look she always wore when things didn't go her way. She wanted to say something, but for the first time, I could see she wasn't in control. Not anymore. "Well, you won't get away with this," Jason finally spat, breaking the silence. "You think you can just walk away from everything we planned? You're making a huge mistake, Mia. Stop acting like you care, Jason," I said, stepping closer to him, my voice unwavering. "This was never about love. It was always about control. You wanted my job. You wanted Susan to have everything, but not anymore." Jason's face turned crimson, his fists clenching at his sides. He stepped toward me, his eyes full of fury. "You'll regret this, Mia. You won't have anyone left. I don't need anyone like you," I replied, my voice cold and final. I turned on my heel, ready to walk away, but then my brother shouted again, his voice raw with anger. "You think this is over?" William yelled. "You've ruined everything. Do you know what you're doing to our family?" I turned slowly, looking at my brother, his rage a reflection of the person I used to be. I felt no sympathy, no desire to explain myself. They had all used me for so long, manipulating my emotions, playing on my fears. But now I knew better. "You never cared about this family, William," I said, my words sharp. "You only cared about yourself, about getting what you want. You think I'm ruining everything? You're the one who hit me. You're the one who's destroying this family." I'm done being the scapegoat. The neighbors murmured around us, but the tension in the air was thick. The shame was palpable, and I saw it in their eyes. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was a reckoning for everyone who had allowed this abuse to continue. I heard the sound of footsteps behind me, heavy and deliberate. Mrs. Wang, one of the oldest neighbors, stepped forward. Her voice was firm as she spoke. "You don't hit your sister, William. And you don't bully people for their inheritance, Linda," she said, addressing my stepmother. "This is wrong. You know it. Everyone knows it." Mrs. Wang's words felt like a fist to the gut for my stepmother. Linda's face flushed, but she didn't respond. She couldn't. The truth was too much to bear. They had all been exposed. "Enough," I said, raising my hand to silence the crowd. "I've made my choice. I'm done with all of you." Without looking back, I stepped away from the group and into the silence of my apartment, shutting the door behind me with a soft click. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't fear that shook me, it was power. I had taken control of my life, and there was no going back. The next few days passed in a blur. Jason and my stepmother tried to call, tried to reach me, but I ignored them. I knew their game. I wasn't going to fall for it again. I wasn't going to be their pawn any longer. Then, one evening, as I sat alone in my apartment, trying to gather my thoughts, the phone rang. I picked it up without hesitation. It was the factory. "Is this Mia Johnson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "This is Director Wang's assistant. The director has been made aware of your situation, and he's very upset by the actions of your stepmother and your fiancé. We have an investigation underway. We wanted to inform you that the transfer of your job is being contested. You don't need to worry about Susan taking over your position. Your father's legacy is being protected." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, followed by a surge of gratitude for the director. Someone in the factory was finally on my side. Someone who understood the importance of my father's sacrifice. "Thank you," I said softly, hanging up the phone. But even as relief settled in, I knew this was just the beginning. The battle wasn't over. Jason and his family wouldn't give up that easily. They were ruthless, and they wouldn't stop until they had everything they wanted. But I was ready to fight for what was mine, and ready to make them pay for every wrong they'd ever done. The fight for my father's legacy had just begun, and I was no longer the girl who would sit back and let them destroy everything I held dear. That night, I lay in bed, my thoughts racing. What was the next step? How could I strike back and finally break free from the chains they'd wrapped around me? I had to be smart, I had to be patient, but above all, I had to be strong. The next move had to be perfect. And then, it came to me, the perfect plan. I would take everything from them, piece by piece. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. They wanted to use me, manipulate me into submission? Fine, but they wouldn't know what hit them. The next day, I started to put my plan into motion. It wasn't enough to just stand up to them. No, I needed to outsmart them. I needed to make sure that Jason and his family understood that I wasn't someone to be trifled with. I spent the following hours carefully reviewing every document related to my father's job, the property, and the will that had been left behind. Everything was clear in black and white. My father's sacrifice wasn't just an emotional legacy, it was a legal entitlement. My job, my inheritance was secure, but they wanted to steal it all. I started making calls. First, to the old factory director, who had always been a friend of my father. I knew he had connections that could help me with the legal side of things. I had no intention of letting my stepmother and Jason get away with forging documents. They would learn that there were consequences for their actions, and the law was on my side. That afternoon, a familiar voice called me again this time. It was the police. They needed more information on William's assault. I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. William was already in deep trouble for his violent actions, but now they were looking for more evidence, more witnesses. The air in my apartment seemed to thicken with tension. This was the moment when everything would change. I couldn't just let things go back to normal. I couldn't let them pretend that I had been the one at fault. I began to gather evidence, photos, messages, anything that could prove Jason and Susan's involvement. Every interaction, every word, every lie they had told me. I started preparing for the confrontation I knew was coming. I spent the evening at the factory, making sure everything was in order. Director Wang had assured me that my position was safe, but I wasn't going to rest until I had proof. As I walked through the familiar halls, a sense of comfort washed over me. This place had always felt like home. My father's spirit was here, in every corner, every machine. I wasn't going to let them steal it from me. By the time I got home, the phone was ringing again. It was Linda, my stepmother. I hesitated before answering. "Mia," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I heard about the investigation. Look, I know things have been tense, but you're still family, right? Let's just sit down and talk. I'm sure we can work this out." I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. Her manipulative tactics were obvious, but I couldn't let her think for a second that I was going to fall for her lies. "I don't need to talk to you," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've already made your intentions clear. I know what you're trying to do. You and Jason wanted to steal my job, my home. You've used me long enough. It's over." There was a brief silence before she spoke again, her tone no longer sweet, but sharp. "You're making a big mistake, Mia. You don't know what you're messing with. You'll regret this." "I've already regretted trusting you," I replied coldly, hanging up the phone. The next morning, I walked into the factory with a new sense of purpose. The decision had been made. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to make them pay. I saw Jason in the hallway. He looked different, more desperate. The arrogance that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a fear I couldn't help but relish. As I approached him, he stiffened, his eyes avoiding mine. He knew what was coming. He knew his world was about to crumble. "You think you can scare me?" Jason sneered, trying to regain some composure. I looked him dead in the eyes. "No, Jason. I think I've already won. You're going to lose everything. You wanted to steal my father's legacy, but I won't let you." Jason's face turned white. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. The coldness of my words had cut through him, and he knew it. He was done. As I walked away, I could see Susan in the distance, her face full of guilt. She was standing in the hallway, her eyes wide, trying to pretend she hadn't been involved. But I knew better. She had been the one who pushed Jason to do this, the one who had used me to get what she wanted. The only thing standing between her and her ruin was Jason, and that was about to fall apart. The next day, I went to the police station with the evidence, the forged documents, the messages, the witnesses, everything I needed to make sure they were held accountable. I couldn't let them get away with what they had done to me, to my father's legacy, to my life. As I walked into the station, the officers took one look at the evidence and knew it was over for them. They moved quickly. Within hours, Jason and Susan were in custody. Linda, too, was arrested for her role in the fraud. The satisfaction I felt was overwhelming. Justice was finally being served. Jason, once so proud and smug, was now nothing more than a criminal, a man who had betrayed everyone around him for his own gain. And Susan, who had been so manipulative and cold, was now facing the consequences of her actions. When I returned to the factory, Director Wang greeted me warmly. "You did the right thing, Mia. Your father would be proud." I smiled, feeling the weight of his words. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. My father's legacy had been protected, and the people who tried to take it from me had been exposed. A few months later, I was promoted. My hard work had paid off. I was no longer just a daughter trying to live up to her father's memory. I was my own person, and I was winning. Jason and Susan's lives had fallen apart. Linda was nowhere to be found. And I was building my future, brick by brick. The factory was my home now, and every piece of it was mine. The future stretched out before me, bright and full of promise. I had learned the hardest lesson of all: never let anyone control you. Never let them take what's yours. Because in the end, you're the one who gets to decide your fate.